providence. And let us ask God's blessings be upon them all and with all of us as we are thinking about the college and planning for it. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
Saint Joseph and Blessed Mother, we offer all our children and parents to your intercession. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Thank you. Please be seated, and all the best.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So we are going to talk about everybody's favorite topic, which is college application process. So for the parents here, this is probably your favorite topic to think about. And for the kids here, this is probably your least favorite topic to think about. So the idea behind this presentation is I often hear parents say they are experts about the college application process in India. They went through it, their friends went through it, they know all the ins and outs. But when it comes to the college application process in America, they're confused because it really is totally different. So in India, all the focus was always about scores and your grades and school, and that was it. But in America, there's a whole other layer of complexity because there's a lot more they look for than just grades and scores. So today, I'm Leona. I'm going to be presenting here with Richard, and we want to take our time to walk through 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, and what you can expect while preparing for colleges in America. So that is me. I'm Leona. I went to undergrad at Hofstra University. I did 3 years there. I'm currently on a gap year, and I will be starting medical school in August, also back at Hofstra. In high school, I went to Montgomery High School. Some of the activities I participated in was EMT. I did varsity fencing and varsity cross country. I did debate clubs. I did the school newspaper. And because I was oriented towards medicine, I also did activities like volunteering at a hospital, shadowing doctors, research, things like that. Abel Stephen was also supposed to present with us. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here, but he had a lot of interesting things, and I wish he could be here to share his thoughts.
Hey guys, I'm Richard. I study at Princeton University. I'm a right off. I'm majoring in computer science, and I went to South Brunswick High School, and in high school, some of the activities that I did were, as a founder and treasurer of the South Brunswick Leo Club, which is like this volunteering club that I founded back in 2015. I was also on the executive board for the computer science club at my school, and varsity track, varsity cross country, all 4 years of high school. Also in honor societies, such as the math, computer science, and national honor societies. I did an engineering program at Yale my sophomore year of high school for 9 to 10 days. And I was also on the executive board for Future Business Leaders of America, which most of the kids will know as FBLA. I was also the public and leadership mentor at YLDP, which stands for Youth Leadership Development Program in Princeton. And I was very involved in that all 4 years of school.
So Princeton University might sound familiar to you guys. For those of you who don't know, as of this year, it is the #1 ranked university in America, which means it is better than Harvard according to the rankings. It is the IIT of India, it is the Oxford of England. So to have Richard here talk to us about the college application process, it's really a privilege, and I'm excited to hear what he has to say as well. Okay, so to get started, these are the 5 aspects that American universities look for when you apply to colleges. So college application process usually is in 12th grade, and these are all the things that you build throughout your entire high school. So that includes your transcript, which is your GPA. It has your test scores, SATs, AP scores. It has extracurriculars, all the clubs that you participate in. It has your awards and honors that you receive, your community service, the essays that you write, and your teacher recommendation letters. So now we're going to break up these 5 components and what you should be doing in each grade level to have all of this ready by your 12th grade. Okay, any 9th graders here? Any parents of 9th graders? Any 9th graders? Okay, so this is for you guys.
Okay, so when we talk about transcript, we're talking about what kind of classes you take and the grades that you receive in each of those classes. So in most of the high schools, there's 3 levels for different classes. There's a regular class, there's honors classes, and then the highest level is AP. There are some schools that offer classes higher than AP level, but for the most part, AP is where it caps off. So when we're talking about GPA, which is the grade point average, we're talking about the grades in each class that you take averaged. And that's a number that appears on your transcript that colleges see. So for example, if you're taking a regular class, it's weighted the lowest out of the three types of classes. For example, in my class, in my school, a regular class had 4 grade points assigned to it. An honors class, for example, in my high school, had 4.5 grade points assigned to it. And an AP class had 5 grade points assigned to it. So depending on what grade I got in each of these classes, the grade points shifted. So if I got an A in an AP class, it would be 5 grade points. If I got an A minus in that same AP class, it would be 4.7 grade points. And then when you average all of the classes and the grades that you get in each, you get your GPA. So it's very important to have good grades, which we all know, and your good grade is reflected in your GPA. Most high schools only allow AP classes in junior or senior year. I was lucky and I had a school that offered AP classes as a sophomore and actually one as a freshman. So I was able to take AP classes earlier on. But for the most part, it's towards upperclassmen years, so junior and senior year. And colleges definitely want to see you take these AP classes and also do really well in them because they know that it's the highest level, so it's really challenging and they want to see you succeed in a challenging class. So if your high school offers AP classes, you want to make sure that you take them. As many as you can, and keep in mind, you have to do well in them, so don't overextend yourself. And don't push yourself too much so that it comes at the cost of a grade, like getting a good grade. But you want to make sure that you take enough AP classes to show that you can succeed in a college level class. Every AP class has an AP test that's associated with it. So after you take the class, towards the end of the year in May, you can take a test. So colleges see how well you did in that class, what you learned. And that's a standardized test across all schools. So the grade that you get in your class can, there's a bunch of factors that go into it. How well the teacher teaches, how hard the tests are. So colleges want to see, how well you do in that AP class compared to other students in your school. But they also want to see how well you did compared to other students across the country, across the world. So that's where the AP test comes in. After you learn all the material in your class, you want to take the AP test test the fundamental concepts that you should have picked up in that class. And it's scored from 1 to 5, 5 being the highest score you can receive. And if you do well in that, colleges know for sure, okay, you did well compared to students in your school and compared to everyone else across the country. So that's the best way to prove that you know what you're doing. And always aim for 5. Most colleges, they're looking for that 5, and they only award credit for 4s and 5s. You can actually get college credit for these classes, AP classes, and so you don't have to take it in college. For example, I didn't have to take four classes my freshman year because I placed out of them by getting 5s on my AP exam. These are just a list of all the 38 total AP tests that you can take. And keep in mind, you can take the AP test without having taken the AP class. So that's really cool if you want credit, so you want to place out of a course in college. You can just take the AP test without going through the class in high school.
So like Richard explained, the two benefits of taking AP classes is one, it looks better when you apply to colleges to have taken a harder class. The second is college credit. So according to all the AP classes I took in high school, when I came into college, they converted those AP tests into 27 credits. And 1 year of college is 30 credits. So because I came in with the equivalent of 1 year of credits, I graduated college in 3 years instead of 4 years. So you're able to save an entire year of tuition, an entire year of your life, and be able to graduate early according to the AP tests that you take. So when it comes to extracurriculars, so we're still in 9th grade, and you're coming in and you see this whole list of activities that you can do in 9th grade. The best recommendation we can give you is join as many clubs as possible. Don't check to see which ones you can do well in, which ones you're interested in. Just try a bunch of things. You could be trying like 10, 15 clubs, and that's fine. Because 9th grade, all you're trying to see is figure out which clubs you actually like, which clubs you might be good at. So in 9th grade, just focus on trying as many clubs as possible. So volunteering is another aspect of college application process. The hours that you volunteer start counting the summer after 8th grade. So any volunteering you did in elementary school, middle school doesn't count. So it starts 8th grade summer, and you want to keep track. So if you're doing volunteering at church, or with your CCD class, or with Boy Scouts, or at a hospital, you need to document that. Because 4 years from now, you're going to need a total number, you're going to need evidence of that community service. So if you're doing random activities and not keeping track, you're not going to be able to include it when you're in 12th grade and actually applying. So in 9th grade, you can start volunteering, summer after 8th grade, and you are probably still 14, so a lot of volunteering opportunities aren't available until you're 16. For example, if you want to be at a hospital or work as an EMT, you have to be 16. So it is very limited what you can do, but whatever activities you do in 9th grade, it still counts towards your total hours. And the hours that we're aiming for is about 100. And of course, any category that we explain, if I say what we're looking for is 100, if you get 200 hours, that's even better. If you get 400 hours, that's even better. So just try to aim for the highest you possibly can to make yourself stand out among the other kids that are also applying. Now on to 10th grade. Any 10th graders here? Any parents of 10th graders? Okay, see a couple. Okay, so 10th grade, your school is going to tell you that you're taking the PSAT. Now, the good thing here is that the PSAT in 10th grade does not count. So don't stress about this test. Parents don't make your kids study for it. It's okay. They don't need to do well on this test. The score doesn't matter at all. The only thing that this test helps you do is the following year, you're going to take the SAT for real. So what this does is gives you a little introduction. That's all it is. It's just trying to teach you what is the test like, what is it like to sit through it, what is it like to take the test, and the scores for this 10th grade PSAT does not count. And the grading scale is a 15-20, so you can see how well you did, but the score does not matter.
Okay, so extracurriculars is how we stand apart from everyone else, because most people have the good numbers, but then outside of numbers, how do you distinguish yourself? That's where extracurriculars comes in. And you really want to narrow down on your extracurriculars, but you don't want to have 100 different things that you're doing. You want to make sure that you pick and choose what you're interested in, what you think you'll excel at, and go the length with that extracurricular. And what I mean by go the length is you want to make sure that you end up in a leadership position in each of these clubs or activities that you do. Because you want to show growth. You want to show growth in everything that you do. And the best way to show growth in an extracurricular is by starting small and then working your way up to a leadership position. So when you're looking for what clubs do I want to join, what activities do I want to do, You want to see if there's room for you to grow into these positions, and you want to choose your clubs accordingly. So yeah, showing individual contribution to the club. You want to make sure that you're actively involved and that you're contributing something that's worthwhile, right? Colleges want to see that when you come to the college, when you come on campus, you have something to offer. That whatever you do, you're gonna have value. You're gonna add value to everything you do. So you want to make sure you show that in the clubs that you're doing in high school. And along with that is creating your pitch. What we mean by this is you're really trying to sell yourself to the college. You want to sell the fact that when I come to that campus as a freshman, I'm going to have a lot to offer, and these are the things that I have. And you want to create a mold for yourself, right? You can say, okay, I'm the debate kid, or I'm the computer science kid. You want to have this profile, and you want to sell it to the colleges. And you want to make sure that you select these extracurriculars that fit to that profile. So say you want to be known as the computer science kid when you apply to college. You want to make sure that you do computer science clubs and like get leadership positions in these computer science clubs. You can do programming assignments on the side, create apps, do all these different extracurriculars that fit to your profile. And keep in mind that admissions officers, when they see your application, they only have a limited amount of time to understand what you did in these 4 years of high school. So you want to make sure that everything that you do is significant and everything adds to this profile that you want these admissions officers to take from reading your application.
So on this slide, we have two sample students. We have Priyanka and we have Jared. So both of these students are applying for computer science at a university. So let's say, for example, Priyanka had 2 AP tests. She had a 4 out of 5 on both her computer science tests. She was part of the National Technical Honor Society. She was in coding club. She won awards at hackathons for coding. She taught coding classes at a library for volunteering. And she was semi-fluent in Python and Java programming. So this is student A. Student B, Jared, let's say he has even better test scores. He has a 5 in AP Literature and AP US History, but he never took the AP Computer Science test. He volunteered, but he did it at a hospital, still really good. He was the president of the debate team. He did the Latin dance club, and he does research in environmental science. So both these students have volunteering. They have good grades. They have a lot of activities. But if you're in a committee trying to accept one of these students, and they're both applying to be a computer science student on your campus, who would take Jared? Raise your hand if you would take Jared as the student on your campus. And who would take Priyanka? Exactly, right? I see the majority of hands for Priyanka. So this is what we mean by create your pitch. So if you have a certain activity or certain major that you really want to get good at, create your resume around that one activity. So you can be the medical kid and have a lot of activities related to that. You can be the debate kid and have a lot of activities related to that. Just try not to mix and match as much. Of course, it's hard to get a perfect lineup like this, and you will have interests. For example, I did debate, I did running. These aren't directly correlated to medicine, but I did have whatever to show that I was also very, very interested in medicine. So that's what we mean by create your pitch. So community service, 10th grade. Now most of you guys are probably 15, 16. So now you can do even more community service. So some examples we put, tutoring. If you tutor for free, that's considered community service. But keep track of that and document your hours, document and verify with the people that you're tutoring so they can say, yes, I was tutored for this many hours for free. Other examples are soup kitchens, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, volunteering with nonprofit organizations, hospitals. When you're 16, you can apply, being an EMT, things like that. So anything that you do for free really is community service, as long as someone can verify that you did it and you document it.
So for 10th grade summer, I would say that this is the best time to study and take the SAT or the ACT, whichever you choose to take. Personally, I took the SAT in the summer of 10th grade in August, and I think a lot of my friends, a lot of the school took it then too. And the benefit to taking it earlier on is that in case you get a score that you're not so happy about, you have the time to change that. You have a whole year to get the score that you really want. So it's really important to take this test earlier on. And another benefit to taking it in the summer is that you don't have to deal with all your classes. You don't have to deal with the stress of school. You can just focus on studying for this test and doing well on this test. So that's one of the main keys here, is that you want to make sure you take the test earlier on, preferably in August, in the summer of 10th grade. Going into 11th. The SAT, if you think SAT, you should think 11th grade, because 11th grade is a very important year for standardized testing. Especially, you have the SAT, you have the PSAT. Both of those, they count when you take it in 11th grade. So 11th grade is a big testing year. Also, to that point, it's also very important for classes as well. I feel like the GPA, your junior year of high school, is very important. So yeah, keep in mind 11th grade is a very important year when it comes to college admissions. So what you want to focus on in that very important year is your extracurriculars. You want to make sure you hone in on what clubs, what activities you want to do, and you have a very streamlined approach to how you want to sell yourself. Going back to that idea of creating your own pitch, you want to make sure that everything fits that mold, that your profile is set and how you want it to be, and you only have the extracurriculars that again are significant and adding value. We also want to make sure that we're not completely one-dimensional. If we want to be known as a computer science kid, we shouldn't just have computer science classes. It's also important to have one or two other kind of activities. Like for example, I knew going into high school, I knew I was going to do computer science in college. And I knew I wanted to sell myself as that kind of a person. But I still did track all 4 years. I did other activities as well, Future Business Leaders of America. These things have nothing to do with computer science. And as Leona said, we still have to have those. So when you hone in on your clubs, you want to make sure that it's not just what you want to, it's not completely one-dimensional. You should have a couple activities here and there that show your breadth, that show that you have your personality is not one thing. And also, you want to continue taking classes that you do well in, and classes that you enjoy taking. So it's really hard to do well in the classes that you don't really care about. So make sure that you take the classes that you like, do well in them, and also that you're challenging yourself a little. Especially junior year, this is when you should start picking things up. You should take your hardest classes, because as I said, colleges really look at your junior year. And the classes you take, the grades that you get in them are very important. And so also now is the time that you want to, build this relationship with your teachers and really see who you want to ask for a teacher recommendation. We're going to talk about teacher recommendations soon, but keep in mind that 11th grade is also when you should start, reaching out to the teachers, seeing who is a good fit to write you a recommendation.
So just to clarify the point about extracurriculars, so 9th grade, you're joining lots of clubs. You don't know what you like yet, you're just trying a bunch of activities. It could be 10, 15 clubs. 10th grade, you narrow that down. You decide, okay, these are like the 10 or 8 activities that I really like. By 11th grade, you're trying to be the president of that club. You're trying to have your own project in that club. You're trying to make your own impact to show that I have done a meaningful, significant impact on this club. So that's the progression. And by 12th grade, you should already have some sort of leadership position. You should be in varsity or getting awards for it, things like that. Okay, so now SAT versus ACT. So the one test that you put on your college application is either your SAT or your ACT. And it does not matter which test you take. Both of them are considered equivalent. As long as you do well, it doesn't matter which one you take. I'll just explain some differences. So ACT is reading, writing, math, science, and then an essay. SAT is reading, writing, math, and the essay. So the big difference here is ACT also has science. Now, when I say science, it is not science facts. So science involves reading a passage, and it's going to give you some sort of chart or experiment, and then you have to answer questions about that chart or experiment. So studying for the science section is not studying actual science that you learned in school. It's not like that. It's like the reading aspect of science passages. Now, ACT is also faster. You have less time per question to answer them, and they're more straightforward questions. So the questions have less time, but they're more direct questions, versus SAT, you have more time to answer the questions, but they're a little bit more analytical. So you might do a reading passage, and one on the ACT might say, what did this character do? On the SAT, it might say, what is the theme of this passage? So see how those questions are different? So one is more direct but faster, and then SAT is more analytical, but you have more time. Now, how do you know which one to take? I would say the best way to know is just take a practice test for both and see which one you naturally get a higher score on. If you're scoring higher on the SAT, take the SAT. If you score higher on the ACT, just take the ACT. It does not matter which one you take. Geographically, more people on the Northeast tend to take SAT, probably because we all talk about it, and then our friends hear us talk about it, so we take it. And then on the West Coast, more people take ACT, but it really doesn't matter which one you take. Question? Yes. So there is no longer an essay portion right now, and these tests are also optional, so Richard is going to talk about that next.
Yeah, so test optional. This is a thing that's like newly introduced, I think last year or 2 years ago. And in my opinion, I think you should still take the test, either the SAT or the ACT, and see how you do. If you do good, you should send it in, because it's another factor that differentiates you from every other student in this country. So the thing with that is, if you do bad, you don't need to send it in. You see what score you get, and you make the decision then. Just because there's an option that you don't need to send the test in doesn't mean you just don't take the test, because who knows, if you pull out a good score, that can really, really help your application. Because first and foremost, your scores are the most important thing on your college application. So you want to make sure that you do well in your classes on the tests, and if you do good on those tests, that you send it in. So I would highly recommend still taking the test and seeing how you do. Okay, so now how do you study for these tests so that you can do well on them? There's so many different resources that you can use in order to study for the SAT or the ACT. And the most common is just buying a book or renting out a book on whichever test you choose. And these books are really helpful because they highlight the very important concepts that are being tested, and it also gives you practice questions. And I would say practice questions are the most important thing and the best thing that you can do for yourself, because you're not going to know how the test looks or what kind of questions they're going to ask without being exposed to them earlier on. So I would say practice, practice, practice is the best way to approach studying for this test. Just looking at different test questions, whether that be from Khan Academy, which has really good resources, or just books. Some really good books are Princeton Review, Barron's, and Kaplan's. They have really good practice questions, so make sure you expose yourself to as many of these practice questions as you can. And then there's also SAT classes that you can take, whether that be paid or like a tutor. Regardless, I think they're also really helpful because you have someone in your corner to help you. who has been exposed to these types of questions before and can lead you to the right path. And one thing I would say about the SAT is this test, or the ACT, these tests simply test you on how well you can perform on that test. The concepts that appear on these tests are not very challenging. Because keep in mind, since it's standardized, not everyone has been exposed to the same concepts as you have. So there's not going to be a linear algebra or multivariable calculus. In fact, on the SAT, there is no calculus. So the concepts are not hard. You just need to make sure you study whatever concepts are there, and you'll do pretty well. So in order to know what concepts are there, make sure you expose yourself to as many practice questions as you can. Yeah, so the question was, how do we view the difficulty of these books, and what's our personal experience with using these books, and how well do they prepare us for the actual exam? I would say the best resource that I used was Khan Academy. I actually, like Uncle said, I thought some of the books were harder than the actual test, and I didn't see the need to do harder problems, because it's not like running or something where you need to practice harder than the actual event so that you get better at it. With the SAT, it's very straightforward. I think it's best practice to just keep at the level of difficulty of the actual exam. There's no need to challenge yourself with questions that are harder than the actual questions will be. So I think the College Board book itself, that gives you practice exams, that was really good, because, well, those are actual tests that were administered in previous years. So you can really see the true difficulty of the exam you're going to take. And I think that's the most important part, is practicing at the same level as the actual exam. And yeah, so Kaplan, Princeton Review, they were a little more difficult than the actual exam. So, I would say the best practice is using the College Board's actual book with 8 practice exams from previous years. I think that was the best for me.
I would agree. I would recommend taking at least 6 practice tests before your real test. So if the College Board book only has 8, that's when you start using other resources. When you get through all 8, and then you need more questions to practice with, then you can use the other sources. Question?
So with that, I actually had this question when I was taking the test, and everyone would tell me that all colleges can see how many exams, how many attempts you have taken. And actually, when I sat down to apply for these colleges, I noticed that only 1 or 2 even see how many you take. So I would say if you take the exam once and you don't do as good as you thought you would, maybe look at the colleges that you really want to apply to in the future and see if they require you to tell them how many times you take the test. Because it really depends on that. Some schools, they just ask you for your score. They don't know how many times you took it. So it really depends on the school.
The other part to all this is every time you want a college to see your score, you have to pay to send your score to that college. So if you took the test 3 times and you're only paying for 1 score to be sent, they're not seeing the rest of your scores. So for the majority of colleges, it doesn't matter how many times you take it, they want to see your best score. And so if you took it once and you think you can do better, I would say definitely take it again. Personally, I took the test 3 times. The first 2 times, my scores were very similar, and they were lower than what I knew I could do. So I had to retake it in the summer after 11th grade. And that's when I got my best score on my 3rd try. So if you have to take it multiple times, it's totally okay. Just do the best that you can, and if you think you can do better, always retake it.
Okay, so now we're in 11th grade and we're taking the PSAT a second time. In 10th grade it didn't count, but when we come to 11th grade, it counts in a way. So if this is one of the things where if you do good on it, it's good for you. But if you do bad, it's not bad for you. Because the PSAT really only matters when you are looking for a national merit scholarship. So if you take the test and say you do poorly, that just means you're not going to get the scholarship. You don't need to send this test into colleges. They're not going to see it. So, but if you do good, on the other hand, say you get a 1500. Most of the time in New Jersey, for almost every year, it's been 1500 is the standard. If you get a 1500 or above, you are recommended for a national merit scholarship. There's other, factors that go into whether you get that scholarship, but numbers-wise, a 1500 has been the standard for the national merit scholarship. So for the 11th grade, just keep in mind that you want to do good so that you can, get the scholarship, and it looks good on your application as well. Saying you're a national merit scholar is a good thing. That makes you stand apart because not everyone is getting this 1500. Not everyone is meeting that high standard. So, if you do good, it's a really great look on your application. If you do bad, you don't need to send it in. No one sees it.
Probably lower, like a 1470, would still make you eligible. So that's where going to a really good state like New Jersey means you have a higher target to be able to be recommended for that scholarship. Also, Richard was a National Merit Scholar, so it's a very prestigious award. Okay, so 11th grade summer. So, hypothetically, now you've already taken your SAT summer after 10th grade, and now this is the summer after 11th grade. So, this is a great time to retake SAT or ACT if you didn't do well previous summer. This is also a time to start preparing for your actual application. Your actual application, which we'll go over, requires a lot of essays. So, if you can get started and finish even just the Common App essay, it's really helpful. So 11th grade summer, you're going to start writing your essays, you're going to retake any tests that you have to take, and you can start touring colleges. So some people think you only need to tour a college after you get accepted to try to decide which one you want to go to. Personally, I found it very helpful to start touring colleges early, and so when I wrote essays for these colleges, I had already been there, I had talked to students there, I had talked to teachers there, I knew what their cafeteria looked like, I knew what their city looked like, and so my essays could be that much more personal. So when they ask me, majority of colleges ask you this question, why do you want to go to blank college? I had a lot more personal experiences to mention than if I just went on their website and talked about things that they mention on their website that every other student will also mention. So it's a great time to tour colleges, especially like tons of colleges in New Jersey. So go to local colleges, make it a trip to go to Boston, or make it a trip to go to somewhere south and see colleges nearby. This is also the last summer that you're able to mention on your college application. So anything you do summer after 12th grade, you're already accepted into college by then. So you can't include that. So this is your last summer to do any research, any internships, any volunteering, anything significant. This is the last time you're able to include it.
Okay, so now we'll talk about how you actually make the list of colleges, and also, what kind of colleges do you want to visit? What kind of college do you want to see? So there are three main categories that come into deciding, where a school fits, like in relative to your application, right? So there's reach schools, target schools, and safety schools. For the most part, reach schools include the 8 Ivies and top 15 schools. And for most people, there's no guarantee that you're going to get into this. In fact, it's very improbable that you're going to get into one of these schools. And that's why it's called a reach, because for most people, it's a reach to get into the school. So, and then there's targets. This is where the bulk of your college list should comprise of. So say you're applying to 15 schools, I would say 7 of those schools, almost half of those schools should be target schools, because these are the schools that you have the most chance of getting into. And these are the schools that are looking for applicants just like you. And that doesn't mean they're easy to get into, but using your scores, using your extracurriculars and your essays, using your application as a whole, these are the schools that you are the best fit for, okay? And then their safeties. It's very important to have some safety schools, like 1 or 2, just so that you have something to fall back on. We can all hope that we will get most of our target schools and even some of our reach schools, but we always have to have a safety net. So it's very important to keep 1 or 2 safety schools. In fact, just to reiterate, just to emphasize the fact that you need safety schools, I wanted to share that I had a friend who was very confident that he was going to get into very top schools, prestigious schools, and in fact he had the numbers to do so. So he didn't apply to any safeties. He only applied to the Ivies and 2 other top 15 schools. So he only applied to the reach schools. And when he got back to decisions, he didn't get into any of them. And luckily he got into the wait list for one of those reach schools, and he luckily got off that wait list. But that doesn't always happen. Had he not gotten on that wait list and gotten off, ultimately, he would have to go to a community college for a year or 2 before transferring into another college. So it's very important that you have these safeties. And in terms of how many colleges we want to apply to, I think 15 is a good number. You can always go below or over that number, but I think 15 is a very good number. And 1 or 2 safeties, 3 or 4 reaches, and then the rest should be target schools. And so how do you determine which of these, which category is which? You can use so many different resources like collegevine.com. That's a website that you can go to and input your numbers, and you can see where you fall in previous percentile ranges. So say you want to apply to Columbia, and their SAT range from the 25th percentile to the 75th percentile will be something like 1450 to 1580, right? So that means 25% of that school has 1570 or higher. So you can go in to CollegeVine and put in your SAT score, and you can see where you fall in that percentile and see your chances of getting into that school. And that's a really good way of determining if this school is a target or safety or a reach. And so you want to make sure you identify which school is which before you apply. Okay, so now what are the things to consider for college? Geography is a big one. You can go across the world and be on your own for a whole year, or you can be like me and go to school 5 minutes away from home, and have your parents come to visit you every day. But for some people that's a good thing. For others, not so much. So geography is a very important thing. Also, reputation. You want to see how your major is promoted, and how well it is what value does your school bring to your major? How well of a school is it for your major? That's a very important thing. Also size, whether it's a big or a small school. I prefer smaller schools, but everyone has their preferences. And you want to make sure you look at the numbers. See how many people go to that school, because it's an important thing. Okay, environment. This is where visiting the schools come in. When you go to a college visit, you can really see how the students mingle with each other. What kind of environment is there? How well do the students like their professors? You can go and ask the students there these questions and get a good feel for what you can expect when you're on campus. And the environment is probably one of the most important factors when considering a college, because you're going to be living there for 4 years. You want to make sure you're living in an environment that you like and that will, set yourself up for success. And also cost. We're going to get into cost a little bit more, but it's important to look at cost, and you'll be able to find the cost online. for each of these schools.
Just to talk about my personal experience with this, I will admit when I applied to colleges, all I cared about was the second bullet point. And it was only after I started college that I realized how important everything else was. So for example, my organic chemistry class, I go to a small school, it has 11,000 kids. So my organic chemistry class had 30 students. So it felt a little bit bigger than high school, but pretty much the same. If you go to Rutgers University, your organic chemistry class is 300 students. So you're in a lecture hall. There's rows and rows and rows, and you could be all the way in the back listening to a lecture. So you have to see, are you a student that likes a big school spirit? Or are you someone who needs a small class? You're able to talk to your teacher. You're able to ask them for a letter of recommendation. So size really does matter. Next thing about cost. So the cost that you see when you look up a college on their website is not the cost that you're going to end up paying, because you have to include the scholarships you're going to get. You have to include the need-based financial aid you're going to get. So when you're applying to colleges, don't make cost a reason not to apply, because you don't know how much scholarship they're going to give you. So wait until you hear back from all the colleges, and then when you're looking through your accepted colleges, then factor in cost. So once you're accepted and they give you your financial aid package and tell you how much you need to pay, then cost matters. So personally for me, Hofstra was a private university. So theoretically, it should be a lot more expensive than Rutgers University. But when I looked at my financial aid at Rutgers versus my financial aid at Hofstra, both of them were almost equivalent. So the cost was not a difference between the two, even though if I compare the values on their website, one was significantly more expensive than the other one. 12th grade, any 12th graders here, or parents of 12th graders? Okay, not a lot. So 12th grade, things get really busy. First, you're going to take everything you did in the first 4 years, and you're going to compile it into the Common Application website. So this is the website that you put everything you did in high school, and this is what gets sent to every college you want to apply to. So the first category is your activities. So in your activities, you're only able to put 10 activities. So if you did 20, there's not room for 20. You can only put 10 activities. There is a place where you can put additional activities. So if you have anything really, really significant that exceeds the 10, you can always put it there. But you want to have at least 10 really good activities that you have. They specifically ask for this. You specifically ask for leadership. So you want to try to have leadership. They ask for number of hours that you participate. They ask for how many grades you participated in it, and what you did or accomplished through that club. So if you joined Red Cross 12th grade, and it meets once a week, and you're just a member, that doesn't mean much, right? Because first of all, you don't have a long-term commitment to it. You only did it for 1 year. You don't have any leadership in it. It doesn't take a lot of your time. So that activity versus something that you participated multiple years, multiple hours a week, and you have leadership in, looks a lot more important. Next category is awards and honors. So they ask for you to put 5 awards or honors that you have. So some examples would be National Merit Scholar, AP Scholar, any awards you won in debate or running or art, all of those awards. There's 3 levels of recognition. So there's local, so if you win an award at church. There's state, so if you're the state champion of ice skating. And then there's national, which is you're the national spelling bee winner. So sections 2 and 3 are the most valued. It's very difficult to get section 2 and 3, but that's the order of level of recognition.
Okay, so now we talked about extracurriculars already, and now we come to college essays, which is another factor of your application that really sets you apart from all the other students applying to the same school as you. And your essay is where you want your personality to shine, and where you can also compile all the things that you've done and share it in a way that, you know, best sells yourself, right? So there's 2 types of essays, the Common App essay and the supplemental essay. The Common App is, like the name suggests, common to all the schools that you apply to. And this will be one longer essay that all the colleges will ultimately see. And then the supplement essays is very specific to each college. So if you apply to Colgate, maybe the supplemental will ask you why you want to go to Colgate University. And it'll be like a very short, like 250 word supplement that you have to write. And this changes for each school that you apply to. So when you write good essays, you want to make sure that you have multiple drafts, because the first time that you write it, it's not going to be your best. Like for me, when I wrote my essays, I thought I had the one. I thought my first essay was perfect, and that was the one that was going to go into my application. And I thought so for like 2 months, and then a couple weeks before I actually had to submit, I realized I didn't really like what I wrote, so I completely changed it, and I ended up sending a totally different essay. And that's a process that every student is familiar with, and that's going to happen when you write these college essays. It's not always going to be the first one that you write that you're going to send in. So make sure you have multiple drafts. Make sure there's a lot of thought going into every word that you put down on paper. And look through it, because there's going to be changes. So what do you want to write about? You want to write about these things: passion, intellectual curiosity, identity, overcoming obstacles. But I would say the most important thing when you're writing your essays is showing your growth. Because like I mentioned before with extracurriculars, everything comes down to growth. Can you show that you were a member who grew into a leadership position? Can you show that you overcame some obstacle and have grown into a better person because of it? You want to show all these things in your essay, and you want to make sure that you highlight all the points that make you who you are, and show that you've grown into the best version of yourself, because that's what colleges want to see, and that's who they're going to take. Okay, so teacher recommendations. This is not, I would say it's not as important as your grades, extracurriculars, and essays, but still a very important factor nonetheless. So teacher recommendations, you obtain them in like sophomore or junior year, and it should be written by someone who knows you best. And this teacher should be someone that you have a good connection with and who can attest to your qualities and who you are as a person. And you want to make sure that this is a teacher who can bring new new points about yourself that you haven't already shown in your essays or your extracurriculars, right? Because you want to show as many aspects of yourself as you can to these college admissions officers, and teacher recommendations are a good way of doing this. You want to make sure also that your teacher isn't just copying and pasting your recommendation and submitting it as a recommendation for someone else, because when that happens, this recommendation is useless. College admissions officers don't care that you're the same as someone else. They're trying to distinguish between two different applicants. So you want to make sure the teacher isn't just someone It's someone that you have a good connection with and who can write something different for you than they did for another student in their class. Yeah. So actually, this is where the tricky part comes in. You don't see your teacher recommendations. On the Common application, you have to submit a request to the teacher, and the teacher will submit the recommendation, straight. And you actually have to sign an agreement that says you won't look at the recommendation. So that how do you know if they write a good one? Well, you can just hope that your connection is strong enough so that it's not the same as some other student. And so, in order to, make sure your connection is strong, you gotta, you have to build that relationship over the years. So don't just, go to the class, sit there, take the test, leave the class, and think that the teacher's going to write you a good recommendation. You have to, condition that relationship. So I think the strongest recommendation would come from a sophomore or junior year teacher. And you can ask for recommendations like whenever, like after, you take the class. It doesn't matter, but, again, if you're getting a recommendation from sophomore and junior year teachers, you should request for that recommendation at the time of submitting your application to colleges.
So just to clarify that, so sophomore year, the teacher can't write the recommendation then and submit it. You have to wait until you're in 12th grade, you start the common application, request your teacher, and then they can write it. But you can ask your sophomore year teacher when you're done, hey, would you be able to write me a letter of recommendation senior year? And they can agree to that in 10th grade, but they can't submit it until 12th grade. And another way to know if a teacher is going to write you a good letter of recommendation, ask them, right? So go up to them and say, hey, I need a letter of recommendation. Do you think you know me well enough to write a strong letter? And teachers are honest. They have been writing letters of recommendation their whole career. So they'll tell you, oh, I don't think I know you that well. If you really need one, I can write it, but I don't know if it's going to be that strong. They'll tell you that. So it's okay to ask them, do you think your letter of recommendation for me is going to be a strong letter? And in addition to the 2 teachers, sometimes 3, that you ask, another way to get recommendation is additional mentors or coaches that you work with. So if you have a club advisor for robotics and you've done a lot of work in robotics, you're the president, you led them to a championship, you can ask your robotics advisor, the club advisor, to write you a letter of recommendation. If you shadow a doctor and they think that you have a good relationship with them, they can submit an additional letter of recommendation for you. So those are in addition to the 2 that you need for teachers.
So the next thing is interviews. And
is it one recommendation for the common app, or is it one per college? So if you're applying 15 colleges, do they have to do it 15 times?
you can assign which recommendation you want to send to each college, but for the most part, it's going to be the same teacher sending it into all the 15 colleges that you applied to. And on their part, that just means they click, a button that says send it to these colleges. And for me personally, I had 4 recommenders across the 18 schools that I applied to. So, each teacher didn't send it to the same schools. It was different for each school, but for the most part, it's the same across the board.
So logistically, how it works is I asked, I think, 3 teachers and 2 additional recommenders. So once all 5 of those people submitted, I can look at my list of colleges, and one of my colleges specifically said they need a science teacher and an English teacher. So I picked my science and English and I sent it to them. My next college said I can only send 1 recommendation. So I picked out of my 5 who I wanted to send and I sent that one. The next one said I could send 3, so I selected 3. So once you have your group, you assign it to whatever colleges you want to do. Question?
When you're getting the recommendations, is there a maximum amount of teacher recommendations you can have on the Common App before you send them out to the colleges?
I'm not sure if there's a maximum, but realistically, you wouldn't have more than 3 teachers. It's very rare. And you would have maximum, I would say, 3 additional. So I can't see it being more than that. I don't know if the program itself has a maximum, but when you apply to colleges, they usually ask for 2 teachers. And very rarely, they ask for 3.
Also, to that point, we want to make sure that we don't send in too many recommendations, even if we can, because each recommendation is not going to add very much additional value, because there's only so many things that 4 teachers compared to 2 teachers can say about you, because you're the same person, and all these teachers are looking at you from the same perspective. So we should say as much about ourselves in as little things as possible, whether that be recommendations or the length of our essay, no matter what. So we don't want to bombard these admissions officers with 5 recommendations from different teachers, because that just means they're going to have to read through them and they're not getting any additional information about you as a person. So we want to make sure that 2 or 3, depending on the school, is a good fit, and don't go too overboard with the recommendations. Okay, so now for interviews. This is probably the least important factor of your application because not everyone gets this. Interviews are most common for more prestigious universities, and not every university offers them. It's also very important to keep in mind that interviews are offered based on availability. It's not based on merit. So it depends on the state that you live in, right? The town that you live in. So that's a good indication that this is not a big factor because it's not standardized. Not everyone has the opportunity to have an interview. These are conducted over Zoom, and they're pretty informal for the most part. They ask you the standard questions, get to know you a little bit. It won't be too long. And here for the interviews, you just want to again sell yourself to the to the interviewer, and show them other aspects of yourself that you maybe haven't shared in your essays or through your extracurricular list. I just want to emphasize the fact that this is not very important because not everyone gets it. In fact, to 5 colleges, I didn't get an interview, and I got into all 5 of those, even though my friends from the same state, from the same town, they got interviews, and some of them didn't get into these schools. So it's like the National Merit Scholarship, the PSAT. If you do good, it's a good thing. It can add to your application. But if you don't get an interview, it's not going to do harm.
So financial aid. I recommend talking to the financial aid officers of your specific university you think you're going to, even to your counselors to get more information. But just to give you an overview, the first main thing is don't let cost be a reason not to apply somewhere. Because you really don't know how much scholarship they're going to give you, so don't let that be a reason to deter you from applying. Next thing is there's 2 types of scholarships that the school can give you. One is merit-based, so that's looking at your SAT score, that's looking at your GPA, and they can give you merit-based scholarships. The second type of scholarship is need-based. So need-based scholarship is based on your family income, what is the average income, what is their cost, and then factoring that in. So everyone does a FAFSA application, and this is for federal student aid. So you put in all of your parents' employment information, tax information, your assets, things like that. And what they basically do is they take the cost of your college, and they take all your FAFSA information, and they decide what is your estimated family contribution. So your school could be $75,000, but they could calculate your family contribution to be $5,000. So now they subtract that $5,000 from the $75,000, and there's $70,000 left. So some sort of way, either through federal loans, it could be unsubsidized or subsidized, through private loans, through scholarships, through merit-based aid, they somehow figure out how you're able to pay that $70,000. So some of that could be loans, some of that could be scholarships, some of that could be subsidized loans, some of that could be unsubsidized loans. Next thing is private scholarships. So you can apply to as many private scholarships as you want. When I say private scholarships, that's when you Google essay competition due in February. Some sort of link happens. You apply to it. It's a lot of work to find these scholarships, to apply to them, to sit down and write it. So the benefit is not a lot of people apply. So if you're one of those kids who has the motivation to sit down and write a 1,000-word essay, your chance of getting it is pretty high. I'll share a personal story. I sat with my friend at a library one day, and we found an essay scholarship. We both applied to it. The essay was talk about a time you volunteered. And we both ended up winning $1,500 each. And when we went to get the award, they said that a total of 5 people applied, and they picked 3 people to be the winners, and my friend and I were both chosen. So you can win a lot of money from applying to private scholarships, and it really just takes the energy of finding it, sitting down, and writing the essay. Some of them don't even have essays. They just ask you to give how many hours you volunteered, or provide like a drawing or a story, things like that. Sometimes it's submit a visual or an audio for something. So private scholarships, you definitely can get a lot of money, but it really does take dedication and self-discipline on your part to find them and to sit down and actually write them. So specialized programs. So the way graduate school usually works in America is you go to 4 years of undergrad, and you can major and you can be a pre-med student, a pre-law student, pre-pharmacy, pre-PA, pre-dental. And so you'll take all the classes you need to. Then you have some sort of standardized test. So for example, I think dental, there's a version of the MCAT for that. There's MCAT for med school, PA, there's the GRE. So you take whatever standardized test, then you need to have all your extracurriculars, you need to have your volunteering, you need to have your clinical hours, and then on your 3rd or 4th year of undergrad, you apply to go to graduate school. So that's when you apply to law school, pharmacy school, MBA, things like that. Certain times, there is direct programs that you can apply directly from high school. So there's direct, all these I listed, MD, PA, PT, dental, pharmacy, law, these are just some examples. The benefit of these is you don't need to apply after your 4 years to get into graduate school. Instead, you're accepted as a high schooler, and you have to follow whatever requirements you have to do in undergrad. So usually the requirement is a GPA requirement and a minimum testing score for whatever your standardized test is. And as long as you maintain those, you don't need to apply to graduate school, you're automatically accepted. So for me, I was in a BSMD program at Hofstra. So after my 4 years, I don't need to apply to go to medical school, I just directly go based on maintaining the GPA and MCAT score that they had set. So you'll realize getting into specialized programs is hard, but getting into graduate programs is even harder. So I really do recommend, if you know exactly what you want to do professional career-wise, it's very helpful to apply to direct programs out of high school versus college. These are just some books we listed. I think one of the best ways for parents to learn about the college application is just to read. There's lots of blogs and books. These are just 3 that we listed that we thought were helpful.
Okay, so we know that the college application process can be quite confusing, complicated, stressful, and just annoying at times. But we just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware that these 3 things are the ones that matter the most, and then God first and foremost, family, and your mental health. And I feel like through this application process, most of the people will keep the first 2 things set. God and family will be there for sure. But for most people, this 3rd one, mental health, is something that they overlook. Especially during this stressful process, you want to make sure that things will work out in the end, and where you go to college is important, but it's not the be-all end-all. And going to a top college will definitely open doors for you, but going to a normal school, that doesn't close any doors. So you have to make sure you keep these 3 things in mind. I know that it goes, some people may forget, but make sure you keep this in mind. Yeah, so just relax. It's always going to work out in the end. Again, college is not the be-all end-all. So yeah, now we just want to open up the floor for questions.
Yeah, first question, where should we get the voluntary hours recorded?
So it depends. I think it's very important to have your volunteer hours recorded for, like if you're applying for an honor society. So for example, in South Brunswick High School, for the National Honor Society, they will ask me to send in certificates, right, from the volunteering places that I went to. So I think that's the most important thing to keep in mind. Say you volunteered at Special Olympics, right? When you go to that event and come back, the administrators for Special Olympics will hand you a certificate that said, okay, you worked 4 hours doing this, right? And they'll sign it. That's the most important certificate that you want to keep. So all 4 years of high school, any kind of certificates that validate the fact that you did these hours, and most places will give it to you. And if they don't, you want to make sure you ask them for it. You want to keep these certificates safe so that you can present them to an honor society if they ask for volunteer hours. But for when you apply for college, I don't believe they ask you for any proof of the volunteer hours that you've put in. But this comes in handy when you apply to like honor societies.
Next question I have. Why do kids take gap years? Is it because they want to go hiking, or why do they do that?
The question was, why do you take gap years? So I was in a direct BSMD program where it's 4 years undergrad and 4 years medical school. So from high school, they accepted me into the class of 2026 for medical school. So when I had the college credits and I graduated college in 3 years, they didn't let me start medical school early. So they said, go, have a gap year, enjoy your life, come back, and then you can start medical school. So that's a specific reason why I'm taking a gap year. Other reasons, if you're not in a program, it is very difficult to get into graduate school. And so gap year is usually the time where people take whatever standardized test they need, the MCAT, DCAT, GRE, whatever test you need to take. That's also the time that they get whatever shadowing, clinical hours. They basically use the gap year to make their portfolio. I went into undergrad thinking, oh, taking a gap year is, very abnormal. But now that I have friends who applied to graduate school, I'm realizing it's almost impossible to go without a gap year. You have to be that prepared, that advanced thinking to avoid taking a gap year and to have everything ready by junior year of college to go directly into grad school. So to answer your question, majority of time people take gap years to create their application to apply for graduate school. My 27 credits were, usually one college class is 3 credits. So I didn't have to take a math class. I didn't take a language class. I got out of 2 writing classes. I didn't need some cultural class. So it ended up being 9 classes that I didn't need to take. The AP classes I took were, my school starts at sophomore year, so I took 2 AP classes sophomore year. I think I took 4 junior year and then 4 more senior year, so I had 10 total.
So I took 14 or 15 APs in total, and my senior year was 6 APs. Junior year was 4. Sophomore was 3, I think, and then 1 in freshman year. So yeah.
Again, question on APs. Does it make sense to do APs which are not related to your major but still offered by your school? So if you want to go for computer science, should you be taking AP?
I think you should. Out of the 14 or so APs that I took, there was only 3 or 4 that were related to computer science. And in fact, whatever major you choose to, continue with, there's not going to be many APs that are offered in just that. Like if you look at computer science, for example, there are only 4 APs that they offer. So you want to make sure you spread your APs across different subject areas, and you don't, just like extracurriculars, you don't want to be just singularly focused on one thing.
One more question. In college classes itself, I've seen 3 different categories. You have AP, you have dual enrollment, you have college classes that you can take in summer by just an undergrad class. What's your opinion on the difference in the 3?
I think from a college admission standpoint, they have the same value. They just have different purposes in terms of the kind of credit you receive in college. For example, APs, not all schools will always award AP credits, but dual enrollment, summer courses, almost always, if you take it at a college, a reputable college, the college you ultimately go to for undergrad will give you those credits.
Yeah, great question. We forgot to mention that. So super scoring is when you take the SAT or ACT multiple times, and certain universities will let you super score, which means you take the best score from each category. So for example, SAT has 2 sections, the reading score and the math score. So if you take the SAT 2 times, the first time, let's say you did really well in math, but then did not do that well in reading. You take it again, this time you do really well in reading, but do poorly in math. You can take the highest score for both sections, combine them, and submit that score. So it depends on whether the college you're applying to accepts super score, but that's another benefit of taking it multiple times. If you have one score that is a little bit lower, if you take it a second time and you get it higher, then your super score can be a lot higher.
To the topic of super score, I think it's also really important to stress that it depends heavily on the school that you apply to. Some schools, when you apply on the common application, they'll say, what is your SAT score, what is your ACT score in one sitting? So they really care about, that you're not super scoring. So some people try to be sneaky, and the first time they take the test, they'll study just for the reading section. And then the next time, they'll just study for the math section and try and super score, their SAT score. These schools that only want to see how you did in one sitting, that doesn't fly. So, when you're taking the test, make sure you're studying for all sections of the test and don't rely on the super score. So I can't talk much about that because I applied during COVID years, so there were no campus visits, so there was no opportunity for anyone really to go through that.
I had a combination of both. I tried to find when there was campus-hosted tours and go to those, but if I had a free weekend and there was no tours, I still visited. Usually if you walk into the admissions office and you say, hi, I'm here for a tour, someone in that admission office will walk you around campus. And then while you're walking around, they'll see their friends, or you'll just run into people and you ask them, hey, do you like going here? Do the students here enjoy being here? You can ask them things like, oh, I'm trying to go into this specific school. How is their major? How are their classes? And then you can talk to students there. So I think the tours would be better. But even if you can't get a tour and you just walk around and talk to students or go to admissions office and ask for a tour, most likely they'll accommodate. Question? Yes, so even if there's no appointments, you can still go to the admissions office of a college. They always have someone usually on staff, and then you can ask for a tour to walk around, or you can just walk around yourself, talk to students. Most of the time, college visits are, I would say, summer into November. So if you go in summer to November time, 90% they're gonna have some sort of tour event going on.
Also, I think it's important to point out that college visits, for the most part, are for yourself to get to know the college and the campus that you want to go to. For some schools, demonstrated interest, which college visits, stand to do, is important. But for many of the schools, they don't really factor in demonstrated interest. I know for a fact, especially, more prestigious universities, they don't really care about whether or not you visited their college because they already know everyone wants to go to their school. So these college visits are more for yourself. But then again, you should look at the colleges that you want to apply to and see, do they factor in demonstrated interest? If that's a factor, then you know, okay, the best way to do this is go and visit their campus, and talk to their admissions office, talk to the students on campus, and mention it in the essays. Yeah, so I just want to thank all of you guys for coming. We hope we provided information that was useful. Again, we've been through this. We know that this is a stressful process and quite complicated. There's a lot of small pieces that have to fit together. And you do your part, you get the good numbers. You do your extracurriculars. You do what you're interested in, and the results will follow. Again, college is not be all end all, but you do your best, and we can all hope for the best to come. So yeah, again, just thank you guys for being here, and we hope we're of use.
Hello. It was a great presentation. Thank you so much, Leona and Richard. It was very informational, especially for me, who is a parent of 2 high schoolers. I'm sure you all have the same opinion. We really appreciate the time you took to put together a nice presentation and go through all the details. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. The session was also live streamed, so we would like to thank our live stream team, Anoy especially.